And we are the Non-Prophets. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Jeff D. Our co-host today, once again, back after a extended period of awareness, is Mary McManamee.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Russell. It's great to be back.
Hi. Though, of course, you realize you haven't been off the show long enough for us to get around to updating the photo on the
Oh, I know. I see it up
website.
There still, so that's very flattering. I like it.
That's the old studios, too.
Oh, yeah.
In that picture.
That's right.
Producer, as usual, Russell Glasser.
Hello.
And today's opening music was A Change Is Gonna Come by Devo. We are live November 7. It's the year 2003. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
All right. Well, it continually astonishes me how much news manages to happen in 2 weeks. Ever since we went to 2 weeks on this show, there's so much stuff. We can barely get through it. And we've got a lot for you today. Lots and lots and lots. Let's try to get the announcement bits out of the way. National Atheist Ombuds, right? Want to remind everybody out there, if you hear anybody in the media slander atheists, what you do is you email something about the incident to ombuds@atheism.org and give them all the pertinent details. They will check into it and contact local organizations that will distribute press releases and so on and get our response out there. The Heart of the Beholder film project still needs your support. For information about this film and how you can help, visit www.beholder.com. I'll tell you that I've mentioned this project before on the show. These guys have a great script based on a real-life incident where fundamentalists used basically every dirty trick in the book to try to force a video store out of business simply for carrying the Martin Scorsese film, Last Temptation of Christ. Mm-hmm. And they attempted to fund this already once by pre-selling the videos. And there may have been like some donation thing involved in that. But anyway, they didn't collect enough money, so they had to send it all back. And now they're trying a different tack, which is simply getting promises of I'll lose a word for this. I don't have the page in front of me. But basically, promises of support, right? You write to them. All you do is email them and say, look, if you get enough promises of money, then you can have my money too, and I'm going to give you N dollars with a minimum of 100. Right? So they're trying to get the project back up on its feet. And I pledged $500 this morning.
Oh yeah.
So
good deal.
Let that be an inspiration to you all. Now you can collect past episodes of The Non-Prophets and an audio version of our sister show, The Atheist Experience, which airs on public access television only right here in Austin, Texas, in a convenient CD format. Each CD includes a full month's worth of audio from both of those shows in both QuickTime and MP3 format, plus extra surprises. The CDs are a mere $5 each. Email atheist@mac.com for info on how to order them.
It's a bargain, folks. $5.
It is.
For that quality programming that you'll find nowhere else.
Does he charge shipping? Anybody know?
I don't know.
I would.
Probably, but even so, I think the shipping charges would be minimal.
Probably.
I mean, it's so light.
Yeah, that, or it may be included. We don't really know, but you can find out by emailing atheist@mac.com. Okay, so news. There's some local news that's been pretty big. Russell, in there?
Yes, there is.
Why don't we start with that?
The State Board of Education voted Thursday to approve biology textbooks despite criticisms from some scientists and religious activists who say the books fail to present criticisms of evolution.
Yay!
Thank you.
Is this, to our knowledge, not a single, biologist-type scientist? Or is there one?
Well, there is one. That's Michael Behe.
Okay.
He hasn't published anything relevant, but...
And Russell, you went to the hearings, right?
Yes, I did.
Can you kind of give us a general sense of the craziness that was going on?
You're going to have to listen to our show archive. I already did that.
All right.
And also, there are audio clips from the hearing.
That's right.
Good.
Go to our
website,
www.atheist-community.org, and click on the past events page, and you can read my full write-up and listen to speeches from me and others and various famous evolutionists and creationists.
Yeah.
The 11-4 vote was preliminary, and the board was expected to give final approval on Friday. I haven't read an update on that, so
yes,
I can only assume. Okay.
You have an older version of the story.
Yes, I do.
The final vote has been taken.
Huzzah.
In fact, the final vote was unanimous.
Oh, really?
Unanimous.
The final vote was unanimous.
Wow.
Well, they knew they were going to lose.
Okay.
So now they're just trying to keep their frickin' jobs.
Well, some people objected. Some board members had asked to vote on the books one by one instead of all together, but the motion was overturned and all were approved with one vote. I wish we'd had the opportunity to vote on each book because they're not the same, said board member Don McLeroy, one of the 4 board members who voted against adopting the books. McLeroy called the presentation of evolution in most of the books dogmatic. People don't realize the threat of scientific dogmatism, he said. They're not looking for the truth. Ironic,
we do realize the threat of scientific dogmatism. It's just that it's so completely overwhelmed by the much worse threat of religious dogmatism.
Yes.
Because that's actually killed vast numbers of human beings.
So true. Of course, according to the creationist, evolution has killed vast numbers of human beings by being taught and making people's life meaningless. I remember Don McLeroy, by the way. He's this middle-aged, balding guy with a mustache, and you can hear him on the speeches that I've recorded because if you listen to Michael Behe's and Jonathan Wells' speeches, he really kisses their ass after they're done.
Yikes.
Samantha Smoot, executive director of the Texas Freedom Network, commended the board. Smoot has been one of the most vocal supporters of presenting evolution in the textbooks. The voices of the science community have been loud and unified, Smoot said. This is not a theory. There's no question about whether evolution exists at all.
Right on.
Not just a theory. Not just a theory.
Yeah, actually, when I read that the first time, I felt like firing off a letter and saying, yes, it is a theory. It's a scientific theory, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there you go.
But we know what she means.
So, we won, guys.
Yay!
Yay, us. And that's not the only major victories these past 2 weeks. Shall I go on?
Please.
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court rejects 10 Commandments monument appeal. The Supreme Court refused on Monday, that's this news story is from November 3rd, so that's before then, to enter into the long-running fight over a monument depicting the 10 Commandments and the renegade judge who wants to keep the biblical list on display in an Alabama courthouse. The court quietly rejected appeals from suspended Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore, who had argued that the monument properly acknowledges God as the source of the community morality so essential to a self-governing society. You know, setting aside the question of whether it's constitutional, what am I trying to say? And that it may well be that it is proper to acknowledge God as the source of the community morality. I don't think so, but that's at least arguable that most people in the country get their sense of right and wrong from the Bible. Mm-hmm. We certainly have a bagload of Christians in this country. It may really be true that that's where they get their idea of right and wrong from. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But that's irrelevant, because it's unconstitutional to say that that's where right and wrong comes from. Mm-hmm. Even if that's where people, in general actually get it, which might be true. I am personally of the opinion that most of them think they're getting it from there, but if they actually read the fucking thing, they would realize that it doesn't really support the morality that they think that they have. But
yeah, what happens every time we ask them, is it okay to stone your kids if they're disobedient? They're like, well, God was just talking to the people of that age. And
God was practicing situational ethics.
Right.
It's apparently okay when God does it. Moore was suspended as Chief Justice for defying a federal court order to remove the monument. He goes on trial before the Alabama Court of the Judiciary, mm-hmm. on November 12 to face judicial ethics charges for his refusal to comply with the order. That's just 4 days from now. So it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday.
And did the story mention that his own lawyers believe that he probably will be removed from office?
No, it doesn't.
Wow.
Well, I don't think so.
No, I didn't know that.
That's what I read earlier. And, of course, they were casting it in this light, like, oh, what a horrible breach on his civil
woe
rights.
is him.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court's action is not a ruling on the thorny question of whether the Ten Commandments may be displayed in government buildings or in the public square, though it's clear that they cannot constitutionally. It merely reflects the High Court's unwillingness to hear the appeal, so they don't want to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Lower courts have splintered on the issue, allowing depictions of the Ten Commandments in some instances and not in others. Now, there's another one of these brewing right here in Austin, Texas.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Right? And that's it is another lower court that is being asked to rule on this, and there is a lot of speculation that this lower court, will say, no, it's got to go, and that will finally force a Supreme Court review. 2 years ago, the High Court divided bitterly over whether to hear another case, testing whether a different Ten Commandments monument could be displayed outside a civic building. The court opted at that time not to hear the case, but 4 justices nevertheless staked out a position on the issue. The 3 most conservative justices said they found nothing wrong with the display of that monument outside the building housing local courts and prosecutors, city leaders in Elkhart, Indiana. The setting reflected the cultural, historical, and legal significance of the commandments, Chief Justice William Rehnquist wrote for himself and Justices Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas. The monument, quote, simply reflects the Ten Commandments' role in the development of our legal system, unquote, Rehnquist wrote for the 3. He noted that, quote, a carving of Moses holding the Ten Commandments, surrounded by representations of other historical legal figures, adorns the frieze on the south wall of our courtroom.
That is true, but I've seen that frieze. He just happened. There are 3 guys. Uh-huh. They're all of equal size. They're not like, bowing down or looking at Moses. There's like Moses, Confucius, and I forget the third guy. But, there are 3 guys who were, historical or mythical lawgivers. And they're all standing side by side, looking straight out. It's not like Moses gets... And you can look up the artist's discussion. Is he in the middle? He is, actually. Uh-huh. You can read the artist's, paper on what he was trying to represent, and he doesn't say anything about trying to give Moses a special place.
Or there. God, right?
Right.
Not saying Moses is important because God told him what to say. All right. Mm-hmm. All right. So, by the way, we have a story about another mythical law-given figure later on in the show we'll get to. At the opposite ideological end of the court, Justice John Paul Stevens wrote that the words, quote, I am the Lord thy God, unquote, in the first line of the Elkhart Monument's inscription are rather hard to square with the proposition that the monument expresses no particular religious preferences. So there we go. Yet another victory.
Except for the one whose God said, you shall have no other before me.
Yeah, that one.
Speaking of Ten Commandments.
Ten Commandments?
Guess what's going on in Duluth, Minnesota?
I don't know.
Same thing. You know how the Ten Commandments monument here at the state capitol in Austin was erected, I believe, in 1957, the same year that the one from Duluth was erected also.
By FOE.
By FOE.
Fraternal
our
Order.
foe.
Yeah, foe. Fraternal Order of Eagles.
Yep, you got it.
By the way, we should maybe stop being so mean to them. I've heard a lot of reports that the Fraternal Order of Eagles is going to these places where the monuments are being challenged and saying, we'll happily take them back.
If what?
If you want to take them down, we'll take them back.
Oh, really? They're just saying it. We'll take them down without challenge?
They are saying if you, the town, decide that you're going to take them down, we will take them back.
So that we can put them in other towns.
I don't know that that's the case.
I don't know.
It sounded to me more like we don't really want to be dragged into this big, embarrassing legal situation here, and we apologize if our monument has caused you a lot of legal problems, and we'll be happy to take it back.
Well, that's interesting.
The impression I've gotten.
It's just
from
PR.
Well,
could be just that.
Could be. Well, in Duluth, actually, it looks like the Order of Eagles number 79 closed in 1979. And there's been
Wow, what are the odds of that?
Yeah,
That's
well,
spooky.
Well, that would be 1 in 100.
Yeah.
Oh.
The monument's location on city property has never been challenged in court until now. And the Minnesota Civil Liberties Union wants that Ten Commandments monument removed from the front lawn of Duluth City Hall. It's interesting, too, the opposition here, their response to the idea of taking it down. The Chancellor of the Catholic Diocese of Duluth, the Reverend Dale Naw, N-A-U, says, quote, "They're the foundation of our own legal system in many ways. The Ten Commandments in so many ways undergirds Western civilization. They contain nothing particularly denominational in focus. They refer to natural law. I don't see the argument they violate the separation of church and state." I know.
You're right. If all there is Christianity, then it's not particularly denominational.
Yeah.
And Judaism.
Yeah. And then he goes on to say, quote, "The framers of the Constitution didn't want to remove all traces of religion from the public arena. They just didn't want to exclude any religions." No,
that is so fucking twisted.
I know.
It's true. They didn't want to remove all religious references from public life. From public life, right. Because at that time, there were less references to religion in public life than we have now. That wasn't the big deal. The big deal was all these religions coming in and trying to grab that kind of influence. And they wanted to stem that.
Right. Because where do you draw the line? I mean, why not have an Islamic mosque in front of City Hall, Or some, Jewish temple, or some...
I think that altar that we had during the Halloween party would be really cool, with all the candles and the...
Yeah.
That's like arguing that, a place that, screens for firearms at the door, right? They're not trying to keep there from being firearms in the building. They're just trying to keep firearms from getting through the door.
Yeah.
It misses the frickin' point.
Entirely.
All right, that's interesting. But you also had something on. You had one of these good news.
This is good news. Yeah. This religious. In Cincinnati, Ohio, a federal appeals court on Friday declared unconstitutional a 3-year-old law that gives inmates the right to gather for worship and follow religious dietary practices. Now, of course, as you may have heard before, this is the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which prohibits governments from limiting the religious freedom of people in prisons and other federally funded institutions unless a compelling reason exists. And
it does basically the same thing to the purchases of land by religious groups.
Oh, okay.
You can't either you can't prevent them from buying land, or you can't prevent them from erecting a church on their land unless there's a compelling reason to stop
to do so. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
That's the religious land use part.
Well, this story is particularly insightful, I guess, on a personal level to me, because once I took a criminology class, and we actually took a trip to some of the local prisons in this area. Yeah. And a lot of the inmates participate in religious affiliated activities, such as, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings is a big one.
Right.
And it really did strike me at the time as an atheist how there really weren't any secular programs going on in the prison. And I thought, well, on the one hand, it's a good idea to have inmates have these programs if they feel like it's really being beneficial. But then on the other hand, I thought, well, what if you're an atheist alcoholic? I mean, what kind of program can you get that's going to help you in prison?
A few months ago, we had this story about how there was a study done with Chuck Colson's prison ministry.
Yeah.
And they claimed that it had all these benefits, but then it turned out that the report was only reporting people who had taken the program and gone out to get a job afterwards. So they were ignoring the unsuccessful people who took the program and dropped out.
Right.
Or
they made getting a job after you're out of prison part of the requirements for graduation.
Right.
And then they only reported the statistics on the graduates.
And then it turned out that when you counted everybody who actually enrolled in the program, whether they finished or not, it turned out that they had a slightly worse rate of returning to a life of crime than everyone else. So I don't know if it helps more people than it doesn't.
I don't know. It was interesting here that Ohio prison officials sought to have the law overturned out of concern that inmates were using the law as a guise for gang meetings. So instead of using this to better themselves in their religious practices, they were maybe using it as a way to...
Is that basically the gist of their objection to this law?
Well, the article is very brief, so I don't necessarily think that's a fair...
I'm not quite sure what the constitutional principle is, right? That it is said to be violated. Is it the principle that the state has the right to restrict the gatherings of inmates?
Well, here's the deal.
I mean, it makes sense, given that argument, but...
Well, I think the precedent that this is according to the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, who heard the case.
Yeah.
They say the law violates the separation of church and state because it has, quote, the primary effect of advancing religion, unquote.
Ah, right.
And of course, if you're a prison inmate, you're a captive audience. You know, what...
So if there were atheist inmates trying to have atheist meetings, those could be opposed.
Right.
Could be stopped by the prison.
Right.
But if you have religious meetings, it can't.
Then that's all right.
Right.
And I think that's very valid. I mean, and I mean, we saw that in action when we took that field trip. I mean, I think I may have been more aware of it as an atheist and at the time as an agnostic, but it was very striking to see the number of religious ministry programs that were going on in the prison where you didn't hear the other voice of, well, wait a minute, what if you're skeptical, or what if you need, help to get over your substance abuse problems in other ways?
Can I voice my paranoid suspicion?
Yeah.
My paranoid suspicion is that religious people target prisons for roughly the same reason that they target schools and they target accident victims and disaster victims and stuff, right? Religion is all about spreading the meme, and one great way to do that is to target people who are either distraught or downtrodden,
right?
Or I should mention the poor, right? They target the poor also. Distraught, downtrodden, unable to intellectually defend themselves, like kids, right? Or a captive audience, like prisoners. I think that's what that's all about. And what I really want to see is I want to see comparisons of the religiosity of people going into prison, right? And then the religiosity on leaving prison. If there was some way to get that figure without having to deal with, parole officers check how religious you're being when you get out.
They're probably not allowed to.
Okay. But I'd really like to know if this is having an effect.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been any
correlations between increased religiosity by inmates and their recidivism rate.
Right.
How many of the people that get religion in prison don't go back to prison compared to how many people that don't get religion in prison? I'd really like to know, because that to me seems the core of the issue that's always being danced around. It's just there's this assumption running that, well, it's got to be good for them. Well, we don't know that.
Right.
We
don't know that.
There haven't been any studies available.
Right. That we know of. There might be somewhere.
I mean, the only thing I know is it's like probably over 10-year-old statistics now on the religions of federal prisoners that shows that at least in federal prisons at that time there was a lower percentage of atheists in prison than in the general population. Whatever that means.
Interesting. We're just better. No.
Is that it?
I think we're just more well-behaved.
You know how much we don't like to really believe that.
Yeah, I know.
That makes it dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
Wanting to believe something is
I know the three of
scary.
us and most of the people we hang out with are better than criminals, but that doesn't prove any...
Most, huh? Can I get a list?
I can think of a few other people who aren't.
There's no correlation, I think, is the point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who refer to themselves as atheists who aren't like, the deep thinker sort of atheists.
Right.
They're just...
as a rebellion, as an act of rebellion against
be. And
the church.
those people might have criminal tendencies. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Be interesting.
Russell, give us some more news.
The United Nations says that Taliban forces have effectively regained control of some districts of southern Afghanistan. Good job there, Bush. South Asia correspondent Jeff Thompson reports, if the city of Kunduz represents the whole of Afghanistan, there may be cause for celebration, not concern. It's there that President Hamid Karzai has launched his country's disarmament, demobilization... What does this have to do with the Taliban? Oh, here we go. The situation is far less encouraging elsewhere in the country. The UN's top peacekeeping official, Jean-Marie Guéhenno, says that the Taliban has effectively retaken control of parts of Afghanistan amid worrying signs that President Hamid Karzai's central government is growing weaker.
So what are we doing over there again?
We're not over there.
Well, we are in in smaller,
but not much because we're too busy. We're too busy trying to clamp down,
attack countries that would be useful to us.
On this country that our president lied to trick people into thinking had something to do with the Taliban,
right? And 9/11,
which of course didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. And so, we're wasting our troops over there.
That's right.
When there are places that are actually a threat to us elsewhere in the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not only Afghanistan, but, was it North Korea?
North Korea, yes.
It's striking the way this administration
prioritizes.
Wastes our military forces on these bogus, made-up things when there are painfully obvious real problems that we ought to be paying attention to.
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
I guess we'll...
actually, I've got one that kind of follows up on what the president thinks will be useful.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
White House pressed on mission accomplished sign. Remember that?
Yeah.
What once was viewed as a premier presidential photo op continues to dog President Bush 6 months after he landed on an aircraft carrier to declare one victory in the war on terrorism and an end to major combat operations in Iraq. Now, how many casualties since then? Was it?
Well, more than before then.
Yes. Attention turned Tuesday to a giant mission accomplished sign that stood behind Bush aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln when he gave the speech May 1st. The president told reporters the sign was put up by the Navy, not the White House. I know it was attributed somehow to some ingenious advance man from my staff. They weren't that ingenious, by the way, the president said Tuesday. But now his statements are being parsed even further. Navy and administration sources said that though the banner was the Navy's idea, the White House actually made it.
Oh, and by the way, more people have been killed now in this confrontation than were killed in the 91 Gulf War, as of Friday when that Black Hawk helicopter crashed.
Well, the Gulf War was only 2 days, right?
No, it was several months, but... the actual, death toll did not reach what this conflict has reached.
Okay.
Well,
this was supposed to be a walk in the park.
Yeah, but let's try to be as fair as possible to these nitwits. I mean, this is a different kind of... This is a different kind of situation than that was, right?
That's very true. We didn't...
Bush's daddy did not march our troops all the way into Baghdad. He stopped, right? And he's taken a lot of flack for that, but if he had gone in, there would have been, much the same kind of risk of retaliation by, local freedom fighters that we're getting now. So
yeah, well, Bush too made the decision to not just go into Iraq, but to take down the leader, create a power vacuum, and sit there and wait for things to get better, because he obviously doesn't seem to be doing much to actually help them get better.
Yeah. But it's not as simple as just comparing death tolls.
Right. I mean, no, that's true.
That's true.
Eventually, if our army had gone in there and conquered Iraq, right, and the resistance was 1/10 as strong as it is, right, well, it would just take 10 times as long for the post-war death toll to exceed the war death toll, right? Eventually those numbers are going to happen.
Right.
So, it's just all, It's just, I mean, the real issue here is all the claims from the Bush administration that it was going to be a piece of cake.
Right.
That's the issue. Not that the numbers are bad. I mean, it's a war. Numbers are always bad. People get killed.
Well, I mean, Bush 1 got a huge popularity boost after he decided to go to war, and I think that's what Bush 2 was hoping for, which is that
it's not working.
He would just be able to do a nice quick raid on it. People would forget about it. He'd be able to do these really nice photo opportunities where he appears in a flight suit like he did, and pretend that it was all spontaneous, like that sign which his team actually engineered.
Yeah.
And then he could use that as campaign, as part of a campaign commercial in 2004. But instead what's going to happen is that the Democrats are probably going to plaster this photo op from hell all over TV
In fact,
screens.
according to the Democratic National Committee that I get emails from, even though I don't currently consider myself a member of any party, but interested in what they have to say. According to them, a recent poll indicates that 44% of people polled had decided they would not vote for Bush under any circumstances.
Right.
Good.
And only like 36, somewhere in the mid to high 30% of people polled said they still planned on voting for him.
Well, even I wouldn't say I wouldn't vote for Bush under any circumstances. I mean, Bush versus Hitler, Of course, Hitler's dead, so he can't do that much damage.
Considering there's a bunch of people like you out there, the odds are probably even higher.
Yeah.
People are pretty likely not to vote.
People who actually think through the consequences of what they're saying, you mean?
Yeah.
But still, it would take a lot to make me vote for Bush. It would take a really awful candidate.
Well, name one that's actually viable to probably beat him.
John Ashcroft.
But he beat a dead man.
I would vote for Bush over John Ashcroft.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Now, well, you did say viable to beat him. Ashcroft probably wouldn't run against his own party.
No, I doubt it.
In fact, Ashcroft in general should not campaign to be elected himself, seeing as how he can't even beat a dead person.
You're never going to let go of that, are you? All right. Did anybody else out there know that our nation is attempting to get the UN to impose a worldwide cloning ban?
I'd heard a little bit about it, but what's
our country is out there trying to get the United Nations to say nobody can clone anything anywhere under any circumstances.
Why the hell does the United Nations care what we think at this point?
They don't.
Well, the United Nations doesn't have a choice but to care what we think because we're in it. But what just shocks and appalls me is that my government is trying to make something so frickin' stupid happen. Here's the news. The bitterly divided United Nations voted narrowly on Thursday to delay any consideration of a treaty to ban human cloning. I guess I should say human cloning. I don't think the U.S. is going for a, you can't even clone.
So the vote to delay it was narrow. We don't know that the vote to delay it was narrow. Well, accept it would have been narrow.
Well, there's some more information in this news story, which I will get to when I get to it. They're delaying the consideration of the treaty for 2 years, a blow to a U.S. campaign for a total ban. By a margin of just one vote,
wow,
the General Assembly's Legal Committee approved a motion by Iran on behalf of the 57 Islamic nations to postpone UN action on cloning until the Assembly session that starts in September 2005. The 80-79 vote, with 15 abstentions, reflected the deep division in the 191-nation world body on how far a ban on cloning should go. The postponement blocked the legal committee from voting on rival resolutions, one seeking a total ban and the other seeking a partial ban on human cloning.
Well, here's what I don't understand. Why are they talking about banning cloning when we don't even really know how it might be beneficial? I mean, maybe there's some benefit to it.
Well,
we in fact know that there's benefits to it because of that stem cell issue.
Right.
There is no good argument against cloning. But there are strong arguments against cloning, and every single one of them is religious in nature.
Can't play God.
Yeah. Can't play God. Can't tamper with the human soul. Children are a miracle from the Lord and should only be conceived naturally.
But not in a test tube. Although they do that already.
They were against that too. But, this is just the latest new technology that creeps them out because all of their religious dogma is based on their understanding of what was possible at the time when the dogma was created.
Right.
Right? New things become possible. Their dogma can't handle it.
Right.
Rather than fixing their frickin' dogma, they go in and try to prevent the new things from being done.
That's what dogma is all about.
That's right. The United States had lobbied intensively for a vote on a resolution sponsored by Costa Rica. Yeah, like they're not our little lapdog. That would have established a working group to start drafting a treaty banning all forms of human cloning. That resolution was co-sponsored by about 50 countries. And by the way, I don't want to... The United States, of course, is a big proponent of this, particularly with our right-wing religious lunatic...
Ashcroft?
Yeah, all of them. The administration. But it's not just the U.S. and our little, lapdog Costa Rica. A rival resolution introduced by Belgium called for a ban only on the cloning of babies, leaving the question of human cloning for research and medical experiments to individual nations. That was co-sponsored by 13 other countries, including Britain, China, Singapore, and Japan, and supported by France, Germany, and other nations. But I guess the France, Germany, and the other nations are not on this committee, so they could support it, but they couldn't actually vote.
Oh, okay.
That's my interpretation. Of course, we're disappointed at the outcome of the very close vote, said U.S. Deputy Ambassador James Cunningham. We're disappointed that the proponents of the incomplete ban on cloning have been able to use a procedural device to prevent the international community from registering the significant majority that exists in favor of a total ban. It's particularly regrettable that it was by a margin of only one vote that we will be prevented from formally registering the more than 100 members of the United Nations, more than 100 members of the United Nations favor the pursuit of the goal of a total ban on human cloning, Cunningham said. Yeah, right. I mean, but there is...
Wait, 100 favorite. How many members are there?
191.
Oh.
It's not like more than 50% of nations favoring this, according to him. But looking at the names of the nations involved, these are not the largest nations that are in favor of a total ban.
You mean these are the little nations that would be most likely to have religious objections to it?
Or be able to be pushed around by the bigger nations that have religious objections. Okay. Still, I mean, even a ban on using cloning to, make babies is insane.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Well,
it raises some questions, none of which lead to any fear of bad consequences, except for bad consequences caused by bigots that are going to give people who happen to have been cloned a hard time.
Well, the other thing to consider, though, is what about overpopulation?
What about it?
Well, cloning would contribute to that, to the overpopulation of the planet.
How?
By having more people. Whether they're cloned or not, who cares?
Well,
they're still going to need resources, and I don't know that we can sustain our own population, much less a cloned population.
If there is an issue with population, right, you don't solve that by preventing medical procedures that are not going to be used by... I mean, it's not like every other person on your block is going to clone themselves.
Why not?
There's not the interest. If there was the interest, everybody would be screaming in favor of it.
Well, but isn't cloning, in a sense, a kind of immortality? I mean, it's not... I know it's not you. It's a copy of you.
It would not be immortality any more than having kids is immortality.
Right.
Which, to some extent, it is, if you look at it from a certain evolutionary perspective.
Right.
But if you're talking about your particular brain and going on forever, no,
I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, or your genes. Who frickin' cares? Evolution cares.
Right.
We don't frickin' care.
I kind of do.
You care?
I care, kind of.
Why?
Well,
because I think
what difference does it make to you whether your genes get perpetuated?
Well, let Russell answer first.
It just makes me feel good.
It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Makes your toes tap.
Okay, I guess.
Because I think my genes tend to be more likable and nice than a lot of other people who are spreading their genes, and I care about the future of the planet.
All right.
Well, I don't
even... So it's egotism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But it's altruistic egotism.
Speaking as a person who's had myself, surgically modified so as not to make babies, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Obviously.
But the thing is, Mary, I mean, the population problem is not coming from developed countries. Population problems are coming... The rate of population growth is going down in the U.S. if you factor out immigration. Right? Population's going down. People who live a long time, who are relatively healthy, relatively prosperous, right? Mm-hmm. Those folks don't make zillions of kids.
Right.
The big problem with overpopulation is coming from third world countries where they view children as a way of, succeeding in the world.
Right.
Right. Where that's what success is based on. I mean, you very quickly become too ill or decrepit or old to take care of yourself, and you need to increase your family's productivity and all. There's all kinds of factors leading you to want to have a bunch of kids around.
Right. But I would argue,
and worse, we go in there.
Yeah.
And we provide them just the technology to keep all their kids alive, instead of all the technology they'd need to become a developed nation where their drive to make so many kids would be lower.
And in Shrub's case, no birth control.
And in Shrub's case, it's worse in Shrub's case.
And also
trying, their babies and not give them birth control.
Trying to withhold funding from any country that gets involved with abortions.
Right.
The big problem from cloning is not going to come from Ethiopia.
Right.
Right? If there's a lot of cloning done, it's going to happen in, France, Germany, Britain, United States,
Mm-hmm.
right? Places that have technology to make it happen.
Clarify,
and we're not where the population problem is.
Well, but we might be if we do have cloning. I mean, who knows what kind of ramifications that would have in terms of our own populace.
Would you clone yourself?
No, I doubt it.
You had a choice, right? But maybe the normal way or clone yourself.
I don't know.
What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really want a child anyway. I'm still weighing that decision as I get older, but I think overall we've already seen with Dolly that cloning has a long way to go before it's ever perfected.
Sure.
And so to be talking about it now it's a little bit difficult to reach any kind of conclusion about it at this point.
Well, they've reached a conclusion. Here, the United States, along with these other nations, has reached the conclusion that we got to stop learning anything about it at all.
Let me rephrase that. A reasonable conclusion. And I don't know. I mean, I am very concerned that no matter what nations use cloning, that we won't really investigate these other issues, such as overpopulation, and that we won't investigate them before we approve cloning, if we ever do approve it, which under the current administration we won't. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I mean, we'll think about it, but not being able... I mean, what kind of experiment do you conduct to find out? You can't. You can't. So, I mean, if there's... we already have to deal with the fact that there's a lot of human beings on the planet, and there's all kinds of ways to deal with that. Not also having cloning is not really a solution.
Well, but why would...
And there's no reason to think that so many people are going to get cloned that it's going to have a significant impact.
Well, so why don't you just get rid of birth control?
What?
Well, if you don't want to look at the reasons or the ramifications of having cloning and what that will mean...
I do want to look at the ramifications.
But you're saying that you can't until you allow it to happen.
Uh-huh.
And
that's pretty much true.
Well, that may be true,
we have allowed rampant population growth without contraception.
Right. And we know what the ramifications
are.
Right.
So now we can make a decision about that.
So why do we need to try that out with cloning? Wouldn't the ramifications be the same if people are allowed to clone themselves indiscriminately?
No, because
asking if you should be allowed
a couple living in a hut in Ethiopia can make a baby.
Right.
They're not going to be cloning.
No, not cloning. There's not going to be any measurable increase in the number of human beings. No statistically significant increase in the number of human beings because of cloning. Why would there be? People either want kids or they don't want kids. Mm-hmm. There's a small number of people who want kids and can't have them the normal way, and for them, cloning would become one of the available options. And so not even all of them would pick it. It's a very bizarre option, too, because think you'd be raising yourself.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
Well, if you clone yourself in order to have a child, you would be. You'd have to raise yourself from infancy, right?
But it's not you. It's not you.
Well,
it's a clone.
Yeah.
It's not anymore. I know. I have a couple of friends who are twins.
Yeah.
I can tell you, one of them is not the other guy. Mm-hmm. It's really clear.
Mm-hmm. They're identical.
They have some. Yes, they're identical twins. Uh-huh. They have some characteristics in common, but not nearly enough to come anywhere near saying it's two of the same person.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm still not convinced that it would not contribute to overpopulation.
Well,
to that problem.
It would contribute to overpopulation in the same way that having kids the normal way would contribute to overpopulation. But we're not saying that you should ban people from having kids. We're not saying you should ban them from cloning.
And here's a good idea. If we got a population problem, do you think that if somebody comes up with a cure for cancer, we should not implement it?
No.
Because it would lead to overpopulation. I mean, that's really the reason for overpopulation, is we have improved the survivability of human beings to the point where we just explode in numbers. Mm-hmm. No, that's not the right answer. The right answer is to get people from stopping making so many frickin' kids. You don't stop them from making kids by withholding one new technology that you could use to make people with. It's not like the existence of the new technology is going to increase the number of people out there that want children in the first place. Mm-hmm. The thing to address is this desire to make millions and millions and millions of extra human beings. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Not cloning. We should move on, though.
Yeah.
How much time do we have left?
Half an hour.
Okay.
40 minutes.
So anyway, that was the
cloning.
That was the U.S. attempt to ban cloning. And let's extend this, by the way, right?
Yeah.
The UN or the United States is pushing for a complete ban, which means no stem cells.
Right.
Right. Not even therapeutic cloning, which isn't for the purpose of making babies, but is for the purpose of generating biological material that can be used to fix the people we already got.
Right.
Which, by the way, would lead to overpopulation.
Yeah.
So that's bad too, right? Right?
No, not if you have Alzheimer's.
See,
I mean, I'm all in favor of stem cell research, and I know it's a contradiction. Well, it's not really.
Too many human beings is too many human beings. I know. Let's have gun squads go around just killing people. Right? That'll get our population down.
That would do it.
Just, we'll have a lottery, and every fourth person, bullet through the head. You like that?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Except I do believe there is a difference between not having more kids and killing people who are already alive.
I agree.
That's the whole issue with abortion.
I agree. Yeah. There is a difference.
Yeah.
And there's also a difference between having a technology that gives people more reproductive options and forcing people, and making it inevitable that people will make a lot more kids. Just the existence of the new technology, there's no reason to assume from that that you'll get.
Just because we can have babies doesn't mean we will.
Right.
Right. I understand that. I'm just saying it would be wise to investigate the ramifications of cloning. I don't know. I mean...
How are you going to find out?
I don't know.
See, I think the way to find out, have the technology. Right? Because I think the real problem is people making too many babies. The problem is not that we have medicine that's keeping us alive longer. Mm-hmm. It's not that we have in vitro fertilization. Right? It's not that we don't take unwanted children out into the hills and toss them off cliffs like they've done in various privileged nations, right? It's not because of any of those things. It's because people don't understand that that the necessity of keeping our population down is more important than their personal desire to make more squalling kids. Mm-hmm. Do you have a news story you'd like to do?
I do. Actually, let's go to Denmark for a minute. Copenhagen, Denmark.
Oh, boy.
Surely the people there can't be as crazy as the ones over here, can they?
No, I don't think so. Actually, though, I wanted to say hi to a friend of mine. I haven't seen her in years and years and years, but if she's listening, Meta, if you're out there, hello. She lives in Copenhagen.
Really?
So, yeah, we went to high school together, and I don't know if she might be out there, but if she is, hey. Yeah. Yep. Home to the Vikings of yore. This is an AP story, by the way. Denmark said Wednesday it will let a group that worships Thor, Odin, and other Norse gods conduct legally recognized marriages. This is a big deal because under Danish law, the state evangelical Lutheran Church has sole authority to recognize other religious communities. And the 240-member, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Fornsider, SIDR, sorry, I don't know Danish, which worships Odin, Thor, Freya, and the other members of the Norse pantheon, sought recognition in 1999, said Tissel Jacobsen, the group's president. Last year, an ecclesiastic affairs panel of scholars recommended that Fornsider, whose name means old custom in Old Norse, be approved, but only if their rituals were clearly detailed in its bylaws.
What difference does that make?
I don't know. But it does say that
why don't they say, okay, we'll approve this the minute you can prove that any of your fucking gods exist?
Well, the Lutherans can't do that either.
You're right. That's why they don't demand that.
Right.
And that's why this is completely insane.
Yeah.
Because people living in one glass house are deciding whether or not they're going to allow some other people to live in another glass house.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so funny because People born in Denmark are automatically made members of the state church, but can choose to leave it if they want. Members of other recognized religious communities, such as Catholics, Muslims, and Jews, are also exempt from the tax, meaning the 1% income tax that is imposed on members of the state church.
Right. Remember, we've had some discussions about why is it that with state-sponsored religion in Europe that religion is dying. And we did a story a few weeks back about, I don't remember if it was Denmark, but one of these nations that has a state religion and has a tax that you have to pay to support religion in your country has a tax exemption that you can apply for. And all you have to do is tell the tax officials when you left the church. And if you leave the church, you don't have to pay the tax. So it's like a money-saving thing.
How convenient.
If we can set it up in the United States so you could save money by not going to church, people would be leaving the church in droves.
Right.
Because we're nothing if not hideously greedy here.
Yeah, I wonder how that would work out.
I don't know. I guess, though, it's already true that you could save money by not going to church, because there's that whole, collection plate thing.
Yeah.
True. I save lots of money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, but then we give to the ACA, but we don't give 10% of our income. Right, that's true.
No, there's nothing wrong with giving money to some group for things that you support, right?
Right.
But that's what that tax is.
Yeah.
You're giving money to that group for things that if you don't support it, then don't give it.
And interestingly, I don't know what the population is of Denmark right now, but about 1,000 people worship the ancient gods in Denmark, meaning Thor, Odin, Freya, and the other members of the Norse pantheon.
Wow, that could be really handy in arguments with Christians, because when you bring up the, what about the other religions? Don't you believe in them? And they say, well, that's silly. Those are just old myths that nobody believes in anymore.
Oh.
10% of Denmark believes it, guys.
Right. Plus, there's the Norse religion creation story, which is not being taught in our public schools, where the first man and woman were licked out of a block of ice by a big cow.
What?
Yeah.
Well, that one had solid scientific evidence.
We found an Iceman one.
There are famous scientists who believe that, I'll have you know.
That you could be frozen and resuscitated?
No, that the world was licked out of a block of ice by a giant cow. Yes, respectable scientists. I'll give you some literature if you want.
I think it's possible to be frozen and resuscitated later. I mean, in principle, I don't know that that anybody's been frozen that is ever going to be able to be.
I think we must stop this state-sponsored cow block of iceism in schools. It's unfair.
Oh, man.
Well, speaking of crusty old religions.
Yeah.
That's Fargo, North Dakota. A Fargo activist has asked a University of North Dakota law professor to help him sue to remove the statue of a Greek goddess from the top of the Grand Forks County Courthouse. Martin Wisnatsky is using a legal argument similar to the one used to try to remove a display of the Ten Commandments in Fargo. Wisnatsky wrote to Laura Rovner, director of the technical education program at the UND Law School, asking her to help in a lawsuit to have the statue of the goddess Themis removed. Themis, the ancient Greek goddess of law and order, that's the other mythical lawgiver I was talking about.
AKA the blindfolded chick.
That's the blindfolded chick with the scales.
With the scales, right?
Yes.
That's her. Nobody knew she had a name here, probably.
Yeah.
Traditionally has been a symbol at U.S. courthouses, her eyes blindfolded and holding the scales of justice. Her statue has been atop the Grand Forks County Courthouse for nearly 90 years. Quote, as a Christian, I find such representation of pagan religious figures in public places very distressing, Wisnatsky wrote to Rovner. She had no immediate comment on Wisnatsky's letter, saying she had just received it. Wisnatsky is known as an anti-abortion activist and a public supporter of the Fargo Ten Commandments display. So
he's just using this for political.
It immediately raises suspicions about his claim that representations of pagan religious figures distress him. But, let me read on. Ravner heads a new program at UND's law school, the Civil Rights and Disabilities Project, which has taken as clients the opponents of the Fargo display. They say the Ten Commandments display is an unconstitutional violation of the separation of church and state. State Representative Jim Casper, Republican from Fargo, asked earlier this year for an opinion from Attorney General Wayne Stenham on whether it was legal for the law school's faculty and staff to assist in the Fargo case. Stenham ruled the law school was within its rights to take the case. Unfortunately, I do not possess the expertise properly to research the pagan religious origins of the Themis statue and to present facts demonstrating its roots in heathen worship, Wisniewski wrote Ravner. I request the assistance of the clinical education program in developing a lawsuit on the same basis as that granted to the atheistic North Dakota State University professors to bring suit against the city of Fargo over the Ten Commandments monument. In a letter to the Grand Forks Herald last summer, Ravner wrote about why she thought the law school should be involved in the Fargo case. One need not be an atheist to believe that it is inappropriate for government to make adherence to religion relevant in any way to a person's standing in the political community.
Right on.
So, is Wisniewski wrong, and if so, why?
Well, I'm thinking about it, and I'm coming back to that Moses phrase in the courthouse.
Right.
Which is okay. Or, I mean, at least as far as I can tell, it's okay to have a picture of Moses up there as art. As long as its being there is not a specific endorsement of the religion, it's nothing other than art. I would say that the same thing about the Justice statue. I would certainly say that the Justice statue does not carry a religious connotation to almost anybody, and that's the same reason why the courts have said that, like, it's okay for "in God we trust" to be on the money, right? Because it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, because it's meaningless.
But come on, isn't that kind of a dodge? It's not meaningless. If it was meaningless, they wouldn't have put it on the courthouse.
Right.
It stands for something.
But it's a symbol. It's not being used as an object of worship like the Ten Commandments monument was.
But the Christians claim the same thing about their Ten Commandments monument. They say, we're not going to go in there and worship it. We just want to indicate the origins of our legal system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I have a theory on why this is different, and it's this. One major theme I've seen, and this is we're basically sitting here, shooting the breeze as non-legal people trying to figure out what the hell's going on, right?
Sure.
One theme I keep seeing come up in discussions of Ten Commandments monuments is the purpose of the monument primarily religious in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they putting it in there for the sake of religion?
And in the case of the Justice Monument, no.
The Justice Monument,
meaning what's her name?
The Themis
Thank
Monument.
you.
It can't be primarily religious in nature because nobody frickin' believes in her. At least if they do, it's like a handful of lunatics in Greece.
Or maybe here.
I don't know. My apologies to any nitwits out there at the sound of my voice who are worshippers of the Greek pantheon. I suppose there could be some of you out there, but I'm betting that you had nothing to do with putting that monument on top of the Fargo County Courthouse.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't think it should be an issue of how many people believe in it. I mean, we just talked about...
Before I said that, though, I said that it keeps coming up in these cases whether the monument in question is primarily for the purpose of religion.
Right.
Right. So your example of the Supreme Court, where they have a mural with multiple religious figures, Confucius, Moses, and some other guy you couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Right.
Does anybody in the chat room know who that is?
Who? Check. Oh, who the third?
The third guy.
Third dude.
I'll check.
That goes along with this idea that if you include the Ten Commandments among a bunch of other things, then that makes it more acceptable, right? Now, what's wrong with fundamentalists going into public buildings and setting up a display where the Ten Commandments are mixed in amongst a bunch of other things is it's fundamentalists doing it. That proves it's primarily religious in nature because that's their motivation.
Right. It is Solon, yes.
Solon?
Yeah.
Right.
And the whole point of the Ten Commandments is that they were written by God and handed down to Moses on Mount Sinai.
But courts have ruled, and I'm glad that they've ruled this because it makes it less difficult to resolve, right? Mm-hmm. They've ruled that if the Ten Commandments are in a public setting alongside a bunch of other things, right? If it's simply
like objects in a museum,
simply historical, if it's simply, how curious all these things are influences, right? Then its purpose is not primarily religious in nature, and that doesn't violate the Constitution.
Ergo, Themis.
Themis can't possibly be up there primarily for religious purposes because nobody frickin' follows the Greek gods anymore. And even if there are the little pockets of guys who've decided that, I know how we'll be cool, we'll worship the Greek gods, I'm betting there's not a single person on the planet who is a devotee of Themis in particular. I bet you it's all Zeus, right? And Apollo and Athena,
Hera.
all the cool, the big 12.
Yeah.
The cool ones.
Yeah, well,
Poseidon.
in Greek mythology, the gods were, real people who would get, who would do specific things for you if you make offerings to them. So you want to make offerings to the really scary, powerful ones.
They're basically superheroes.
They're the ones
of yours.
Yeah, they're
right.
superheroes.
And some of them still are.
If you build them,
Thor has still got his own comic book.
Oh, he does, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But if you build them enough temples, then they'll be happy and bless you with, good harvests and crap.
Hercules had a comic book for a while.
He's not a god.
He's not a superhero, but he was a demigod. But then didn't he ascend and become a full god? I believe he did.
I don't know.
Check your mythology. Okay. All right. Mary?
Yes. Well, okay.
More religion in public places, right?
All right, yes. And actually, I've got two of them.
Okay.
Let me do this one first out of Sparks, Nevada. This is some bad news, folks.
Oh, no.
The ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, which advocates strict separation of church and state, has nevertheless decided not to challenge Sparks, Nevada Mayor Tony Armstrong's new God Bless America signs at City Hall. This is from the Associated Press. Richard Siegel, president of the state ACLU in Nevada, told the Reno Gazette-Journal the signs are no concern because they are not specific to any religion. Now, this is the whole conversation we were just having.
No, it's not. That's a shitty argument.
Well, I agree. I know. It's like you're a lawyer. Fight them.
No, I mean,
and besides the key issue is not whether it's any religion in particular, but whether it's religion promoted over non-religion.
Right.
Which they clearly are doing. It's a clear violation of that part of it.
And it is a particular religion promoted because it doesn't say Zeus.
Yeah, but there are non-Christian religions that refer to their God as God. In Muslims, many Muslims will say God. And a lot of ancient Greeks, they were talking about God and they meant Zeus. Right? So, I mean, that can be a valid argument.
I think he's just being a wuss. The president of the Nevada ACLU.
It does surprise me a lot that they let that one go.
Yeah. The Mayor Armstrong was outraged after the word God was removed from similar signs at City Hall on the advice of City Attorney Chet Adams, who feared they could be viewed as a city endorsement of religion and would invite lawsuits. Armstrong then bought new signs with his own money and posted them September 30th. Armstrong claims the God Bless America signs are national, not religious symbols, and says he has received overwhelming support from the public.
No, if it just said, America is great. That would be national and not religious.
Right.
As soon as you put God in there, it's religious.
Or just like,
national.
and just like that story we did, a couple of years ago, right after September 11th. The one where Dr. Pepper here in Texas had made cans. Where up at the top it said, one nation, ... indivisible. That is a secular, non-religious slogan.
Right. That,
right.
This is utter bullshit. I cannot figure out. That's the extent of the story, though, huh? There's
that's it. No further background. But speaking of bullshit, Reuters news agency. I am so pissed off. I mean, I majored in journalism, and this is what we get. I mean, this is really sickening.
Okay.
But New York City, Times Square, picture it. You know the ticker that's downtown in Times Square? I don't know if you've been there, but if you ever get a chance to go, please do.
Times Square.
Okay, cool. Well, there's a huge ticker.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Wow.
Yay! Well, the Reuters news agency has a huge ticker that usually has news headlines, but now they're going to be having religious messages. The United Methodist Church signed a $30,000 contract in September to display a series of Thanksgiving season messages. Originally, Reuters news agency revoked the deal, saying that it violated company rules. Designed to preserve, quote, its independence, integrity, and freedom from bias, which, hello, if you're a news agency, that's what you should be based on. But apparently
should be fair and balanced.
That's
like
right.
Those
Thanks, Al Franken. But,
We're not balanced, but we are fair.
Yeah. Well, sometimes.
No, we're fair. We're just not balanced.
Yeah, that's true.
We're unbalanced?
We're not... Well, all right, you got me.
Well,
Go on, Mary.
It was the chief executive officer, Thomas Glosher of Reuters, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who said he had reconsidered the ban, which were to run for 11 days as part of a 4-year, $21 million media campaign by the United Methodist Church. Basically... He says, the CEO of Reuters says, quote, consumers have become more sophisticated over recent years, and I think there is little likelihood of an advertisement being viewed as the opinion of a news gatherer such as Reuters. He, the CEO, says he agrees that the church should have the same access as commercial advertisers to the electronic billboards, provided its material could not be confused with Reuters' own news product. So here's my commentary.
Yeah.
I suggest either the Atheist Community of Austin or some secular group, call up Reuters, give them $30,000 and say, I want my website, www.atheist-community.org, to be posted on your news ticker. And they'd have to do it.
Well, I mean, if you give them a whole lot of money.
Sure.
But
yeah.
I mean,
and that would be an interesting test to see if this is a rules change that they will now stick with, or whether they simply bent over for religion.
Yeah.
Right? And this is, it's unfortunate that religions got the deep pockets in our country, and not us. Mm-hmm. But it's not unfair just because they can afford to spend the money and we can't.
Well, but to me, since my background is in journalism, to me what's unfair about this is that the news biz is supposed to be fair and balanced. And it's true that by presenting this message, they are being fair to the Methodists.
Yeah.
But it's not balanced because they're not showing others.
I mean, does being fair and balanced for a news agency go so far as if you advertise for one laundry detergent, you must also
advertise
for the other one? I mean, you have to wait till the other laundry detergent people come to you and say, here's our money. You don't turn them down. You don't say, we will advertise for Tide, but not for...
Cheer.
Cheer, right? Again, right? You wouldn't do that.
Arm and Hammer.
But they're not obligated to say, I'm sorry, Tide, we can't put your ad up until we also get an ad from Cheer.
Right. Well, here's what they will do, and I know this for a fact. I had an internship briefly in college for Texas Monthly magazine, and one thing that they're very careful about is the placement of the advertisements that they put into the magazine.
Right.
For example, they're not going to have side-by-side advertisements for Tide and Cheer. If they advertise Tide, then they'll space out maybe about 16 pages or so before they put in the Cheer ad to make sure that consumers don't have to, try to look at each ad as a competing entity with another ad.
Yeah, and
but it is a competing entity.
But it is a competing entity. But they don't want the consumer to be aware of it.
I think that's underhanded and sick. I think they should sit all ads for all competing products together on the same page.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting though to look at it that way because then
it's just like in the Statesman, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a while, the ACA, Atheist Community of Austin ad was not running in the religion section.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're not even sure we want it in the religion section, but it seemed kind of odd that it wasn't.
Right.
Right? It seemed sort of discriminatory that it wasn't, that distance was being put between us and our competitors.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the guy does, again, trying to be fair to him.
Yeah.
What they don't say is, I mean, if Reuters said, okay, Methodist Church, you gotta sign your ads. We're worried that people will think it's us saying these religious Thanksgiving messages. So it's gotta say, brought to you by the Methodist nitwits.
But see, that would give them more wording for free.
No,
they obligate them to do that.
Yeah.
Or if Reuters itself went in there and put it along with it.
A disclaimer.
This ain't us, folks. This is the church.
Yeah, I think that's what they ought to do, because otherwise it does imply that it's Reuters that is making the announcement.
We're talking about, right?
Yes.
It's just a strip of words.
Yeah, I've got the full scoop. It's a 3 full-color LED display screens covering 7,000 square feet in Times Square, and an estimated 1.5 million people pass through this area daily.
But is this one of those things you see, like, wrapped around the side of a building and it's words going in a line?
Yes.
Or is it the big LED display thing way up overlooking Times Square that's a big panel?
That's a good point. I think on their building they have both.
Yeah.
They have both on that building.
Because on one it would be easier to make it clear what the station was.
Well,
it's a ticker, though, right?
No, actually, this describes it as a 3 full-color. So there are going to be 3 of these. Mm-hmm. They're going to be full-color LED displays. So it's going to be like a billboard kind of thing.
Another part of me says, take their money. Because the faster we can drain money out of religion for stupid shit like this, the better.
We can't drain money out of religion that way. The reason they would bother putting stuff up on the sign is because they have so much money to burn.
But we need to get the message out to people who are going to church that, hey, folks, if you stop going to church, it'll save you money.
Yeah.
We're atheism. We're here to save you money.
We won't be undersold.
I don't think they have that commercial outside of Austin. So.
Yeah.
Atheist discount social group.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of more religion in public, do you have religion in public places?
No.
Do you mind if I do a quick story?
Go ahead.
This is a short one.
You've got 10 minutes.
In the same vein as the Fargo the statue of Themis, DuQuoin, Illinois. A Perry County woman informed the Perry County Board that since the separation of church and state prohibits the county from allowing a nativity scene on the courthouse lawn, she does not want them to allow the 3-story Santa to be erected this year either. Patricia Roberts said some people worship Santa.
What?
Patricia Roberts said some people worship Santa.
Who worships Santa?
I don't know.
That's a good question, but
nobody
she insists they do.
Santa.
Therefore, he is a religious symbol and should not be allowed. A skeptical board made no response. Roberts approached the board last year asking for permission to put a nativity scene on the courthouse lawn during the Christmas season. She was told that a nativity scene would be illegal. However, State's Attorney David Stanton was directed to contact the Attorney General's office for an opinion. Stanton said Tuesday that the Attorney General's Opinions Bureau has not issued an opinion and will not do so anytime soon. He was told the issue is not a priority at this time. The bureau chief didn't use the words no-brainer, but that's pretty much what it is. The county cannot support religion, Stanton said. Oh, that's good. So having not gotten any support from the Attorney General, he himself still said, well, look, we can't do religion. Mm-hmm. Roberts said she was quite angry at her elected state officials. Stanton explained that it's the Supreme Court of the United States that prohibits support of specific religions by federal, state, county, and city governments. Roberts said she will pursue other options for getting a nativity scene on the square. She has asked the owner of the vacant lot on the east corner of the square if she could rent or just use the space for a nativity scene, but has not received an answer. Well, that's fine. You're allowed to rent some space off of government property to put up your frickin' stupid religious display. That's perfectly acceptable. But, I mean, but she might be right. We just found out there were worshippers of the ancient Norse gods in Denmark, right? There could be Santa worshippers. I don't know. I'm going to go home and I'm going to type, Church of Santa into my browser.
You'll probably get some misspellings.
There's a Church of Satan.
Yeah. But, Christians have a history of responding to reasonable arguments against them by trying to co-opt those arguments, making them something really ridiculous.
Yes, in fact,
when people argue that they're intolerant, they get all, well, you're intolerant to my Christianity by not letting me shove it in your face. They have a history of twisting reasonable arguments.
You're right,
and
the fact that these two cases have come up at the close in time.
At the same time, I bet you could trace that back to a specific call to action from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I betcha.
I think it could.
We don't know. We're just guessing, but it looks like it.
I think it could be argued that kids worship Santa. I think if anybody worships Santa, it might be children. Yeah,
it's possible.
Depends on your definition of worship.
Yeah. Go ahead, Russell. Give us a story.
All right.
Tell us a story, Russell.
This is a mixture of bad and good news.
Okay.
President Bush, you probably heard, signed into law a ban on so-called partial birth abortions, which we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
A federal judge in Manhattan blocked the government's new ban on a type of abortion yesterday, granting a temporary restraining order to a network of abortion providers that challenged the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act as unconstitutional just moments after President Bush signed it into law on Wednesday.
Moments.
So they were sitting there waiting for the news to come down, and they're like, now!
Yeah, they knew it was going to happen.
Well, of course, everybody knew. We knew 2 weeks ago, and we're the non-prophets.
Yeah. We can't even tell the future. We have no idea what's going to happen.
The ruling is expected to have national implications because the group that filed the lawsuit, the National Abortion Federation, I never even heard of them, has clinics in almost every state and says it performs half of the abortions done nationwide. In addition to the network, 7 individual doctors joined the suit, which was brought with the assistance of the American Civil Liberties Union. The decision follows a similar ruling from a federal district judge in Lincoln, Nebraska, that was the first to bar the law from taking effect. So there's 2 places, actually, that have already done this. But that order was limited, applying only to the 4 doctors who brought the lawsuit. In contrast, the temporary restraining order signed yesterday may have a sweeping effect, because though it too applies only to the people who brought the suit, the network has 350 clinics in 47 states. The group says it treats about 700,000 women a year. So Bush signed a law saying you can't do this, but
moments
a court
later
immediately said, yes, they can, until we check this out and see if it's unconstitutional.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's going to be found unconstitutional because a similar law in the state of Nebraska, I think, was already declared unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, I mean, we have a major Supreme Court case that says you can't outright outlaw abortions.
Period.
I mean, Roe versus Wade, President Bush is basically trying to overturn a Supreme Court decision.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He can't do that. He's the executive branch.
Right. And for that matter, so is his brother. Yeah. Well, the other thing I want to say is, I mean, I know y'all have probably already talked about this 2 weeks ago, but, I mean, don't people realize that if you outlaw abortion, if it's made illegal, it's still going to happen?
Sure.
That's the whole point.
Same thing with cloning, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, and that's what makes me so angry.
Well, but if I can play devil's advocate, same thing with murder. Actual murder. Murder still happens.
Yeah.
But it might happen less because there are laws against it.
Right.
But it's okay for a woman to kill herself because she has to go to some back alley clinic to have an abortion as opposed to getting a safe one.
The remaining abortions that do happen will be more grisly and less professional.
Yeah.
But I bet there would be less of them.
Well, yeah,
I don't think so.
At a certain level, the laws are not there to actually prevent the activity. The laws are there to indicate what it is we're going to punish. Right?
Right.
What are we going to punish people for? We're going to punish people for ending unwanted pregnancies.
Well, why don't
We're going to punish people for using science to create genetically identical human beings.
Why don't we just start punishing people for having sex? I think that would do it.
I'm sure they would do that if
they could.
Yeah.
Some people punish each other as a sex act.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's weird.
Yeah, but that's not something Bush would be behind.
Yeah, or would he?
Well, he would want, in the interest of reducing the size and influence of our federal government, he would want the punishment of those people to be at the hands of federal law enforcement officers.
Oh, and God.
Or the Homeland Security Department.
Well, it's like the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Remember, if you're in his cult, you're required to have a picture of him on your bedside when you have sex.
Oh, no.
Pretty much.
So it would be like that.
Yuck.
Remember, you can punish your partner in sex, but Moon has to be watching and approving of it.
So are you saying we should all put pictures of George W. on our wall before we have sex?
Well, it's the logical conclusion. Uh-oh, we have 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Okay, well, everybody, it's been a rollicking show. Mary, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I had a great time.
Coming back to the show. We'll hope to have this happen more often now,
you bet.
periodically.
Yeah.
Russell, excellent work, as usual. Thank you to the Atheist Network for having us on the air. Folks, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye. We'll leave you with Devo.
Bye.